Welcome to Season 6, Episode 240 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian starting my 17th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. Before we get started, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the amazing librarians working at the Royal Oak Public Library. Recently, they made the decision to offer Comics Plus to all their patrons, and this includes my staff and students. I do not have the funding to even consider a building subscription for my students, and I get to be the hero this week sharing this exciting news with everybody I work with. My public library peers have come to my rescue in the past, and friends, I encourage you to reach out to the public librarians in your community, especially when there are resources which really are beyond your ability to fund, but maybe this is something that they could, and this has happened in several communities where I work, and when we haven't been able to fund a resource, I've gone to the public librarians and been pleasantly surprised, so give it a try. I'd like to extend a very special welcome this week to listeners Madison in Australia, Brittany in Connecticut, Tom in Missouri, Gianna in North Carolina, Amanda in Texas, Ben in Washington State, and Michelle in Wisconsin. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at LMS_United, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Be sure to listen to episode 224. I announce a new sponsorship with Literati Book Fairs. And now is a chance to hear from one of Literati's team members, Michael. Friends, I am so excited. Michael Murata, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, you're part of this Literati team. Would you let us know what is your role as the book fair support team lead at Literati?
Sure. Yeah. As the team lead of our support team, I work with our support agents on a daily basis. They're the ones that are really in contact with our customers, customer-facing 24/7 for us. Basically, we're there during the book fair week to be there for our customers, for our librarians to reach out to us with any questions that they might have during the book fair.
As you well know, Michael, when librarians are hosting book fairs, they're also doing like 17 other things as well, including their jobs. And fundraising tends to be something that we sort of squeeze in there out of necessity. Can you tell us, what does Literati do? And particularly you, I mean, you're probably more aware of what's going on with the librarian during their book fair. But tell us, how are you helping the school librarians during their book fair?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're available. Our support team is available via phone and email throughout their book fair week. They're able to reach out to us with any questions, anything that might come up during that book fair. Leading up to the book fair, they'll communicate with their account manager assigned from Literati that will help them prepare for the book fair as it gets closer. Once that book fair week starts, our support team is that main source of contact for anything our customers might need.
Fantastic. I know that I always go into panic mode, especially when I'm trying to multitask. And so knowing that Literati is there and ready to help throughout the fair is really helpful. I hope you plan on joining us and giving us a little better understanding of all the things that you do for Literati in a future episode.
That would be amazing.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Thanks, Amy.
Friends, tune in to learn all about Literati and their generous offer. Librarians who book their very first Literati Book Fair for this upcoming school year and mention the code UNITED when booking may qualify to receive a $500 gift card from Titlewave. Visit the link in today's show notes and call the Literati team today to see if you qualify. And now a word from Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children. And I'm so grateful to be working with them and their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 6. They are offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for today's episode, Newsletters 101, and my conversation with Faith Huff. Faith Huff, welcome back to the podcast.
I am so excited to be here.
Friends, we are witnessing a little hat trick here. Faith has visited the podcast. This is your third episode. So in April of 2021, episode 124, you shared with us how you were redefining your role in the wake of a pandemic. And I'm going to tell you right now, friends, that whole episode was inspired by a tweet. And I remember going after that and was like, wait a minute. Because you can just tell when somebody's like so frustrated. And I could tell so much about you just from that one tweet. And that was how we met. And the rest is history. In February 2022, you joined us for round 2, Can I Just Vent? And I'm hoping for an update. Have you managed to redefine your role?
I think I have. So I've kind of library hopped unintentionally for the last few years. I ended up leaving the job that I was at when we had our first discussion to go to a school where I didn't have to do technology, because that was a lot of my frustration, was having to do both, as a lot of us do. And then my husband got a job somewhere else. So the next year I moved to another school where I was back in charge of technology. And we were about an hour and a half from my family at that point. And my niece was 6 months old when we moved. And I don't know why my husband and I thought we could be an hour and a half away from our only niece. But I remember coming home to visit and she didn't remember me. And I was like, this is not going to happen. So we moved back. I've kind of been hopping around, and through all of those experiences in different schools kind of right on top of each other, I've really discovered that each school is different, and what redefining the role looks like is so different in every building. The first school I moved to after I left, I was coming behind nobody. There had been no librarian. It was a storage space. Kids kind of did whatever. And so redefining the role of the librarian was teaching them what that meant, like what I could do, what the space could be. And I feel like I was really successful at that. I hated to leave that school. I really loved it. The next school, I was coming behind someone who had already built a strong program. And we were a little bit different. So redefining the role meant kind of helping them understand my personality and what I wanted the library to be, and helping them. I was doing technology again, so making sure I set those boundaries for technology. And now I am in a different place, and it's slightly different everywhere I go, but I feel like I have done that everywhere a little bit. The teachers say, hey, I never knew a library could do XYZ, or that the kids would love coming, or I never thought about doing that in the library. And to me, when students and teachers are saying the library is a little bit different than what I thought, then I feel like I have redefined that role a little bit.
I love it. You mentioned something, and I can't let you go without sort of expanding on it a little bit, because I'm lousy at it. Apparently, I have no boundaries. How does one set professional boundaries? Because I am such a people pleaser, and this is, my third year at my high school, and I no longer consider myself new. There are a whole bunch of people who have come in since I started 2 years ago. And I really feel like I've got my footing, but when it comes to boundaries, I'm not what I would say spineless, and I do have principles that I will stand for and hills that I'll die on in the library world, which is another episode. What hill would you die on? I mean, here we go. Friends, there's an episode. You know what I'm going to do? Okay, so I think what we're going to do is, friends, first of all, I'm just going to say this out loud. I have realized that January is like the best time, if you happen to be a podcaster, to get a lot of people to chime in. So look for in January, we're going to do a crowdsourced episode called Hills I'll Die On.
I love it. I love it. We all have them.
It's going to be a call-in. It's going to, and you can call in. You can get your 10 minutes. Hills I'll Die On, to be recorded in January. So friends, start thinking about it. Faith is as my witness. We're going to do this in January. Mark your calendars. All right, Hills I'll Die On. All right, so Faith, how do you set boundaries? Because I am spineless. I do not know how to say no to people when it comes to things they ask me to do in the school setting.
There's a fine line, too, because you want to be everyone's hero. You want people to know they can come to you and do stuff. And it feels really great when you can do those things for them. I am kind of spineless, too, and I'm a people pleaser. But I have learned that just takes away from what I really need to be doing. If I offer to laminate everything for everybody, then at some point I'm not going to be able to help a student because I'm doing something else, or I won't be able to collaborate with the class because I need to do all these other things I said I would do. And so, especially when it comes to like technology, I made very clear rules about when I was accessible to fix things and do things. And I told them up front that the students came first. So unless it was like a super emergency, which I can't think of what would constitute a super technology emergency, then you just bring the device up and leave it, or send me an email and I'll go when I have a chance to fix it. If there's kids in the library, they stay until they're done doing what they're doing. And I did get a little bit of pushback from that, but once they start seeing if they look, and some of them will never see, like some of them just want you to be their servant. But if you're not afraid to cry in your car, no, I'm just kidding. But like I just tell them all the time, like, I'm here first for the students and second for you. And so I'm here for you. I will do whatever you need. I'll come in early. I'll stay late if I need to. And it's something that really requires me. But if it doesn't really require me, then I'm going to do what's best for the kids. And also I train some kids to do some basic stuff. So I taught some to like wipe and re-enroll devices, or some of the things that you do all the time. So I could say, ask somebody in your class if they know how. I've taught a lot of kids how to do this. So the more I could let the kids kind of troubleshoot before they got to me, because teachers are really bad, especially with devices. It'd be like, it's broken. Okay, so then I spend a day trying to figure out what's wrong with it. So if the kids can try to fix it, then they can say, well, I did this, this, and this. And so I'll be like, okay, now I know where I need to start. But it's not easy for me either. But I'm much happier eventually. In the moment, I'm very anxious. But at the end of the day, it goes away. I feel much better. But it's hard for me too. And I have to be really consistent. And I have to stick by it even when they are being a problem.
Yeah. I'll be honest. When it comes to setting boundaries, if I've got a class, I'm busy. I'm not.
It's so much easier.
I don't care that you've sent me 3 print jobs. I am teaching, or I'm checking out, or I'm doing something with my students, and I am not. I can multitask when I'm not teaching, but if I'm in front of a class, nope. I am not. They've got me, and I'm just going to give you. I'm going to give them all of my attention. So yeah, for me, that's the boundary. Like if I'm actively with a class and I see kids at the door, like expecting me to do stuff, I'm like, sorry. Yep. Busy.
And not to jump ahead, but that's where some newsletters come in handy to make sure they know what you're doing and why you couldn't. Yeah, just saying.
Excellent. So friends, I am going to be completely forthcoming. Newsletters are something that I've always been told I have to do. I think if I had ever been given like my choice, I think I would find some other way to advocate for what I do that does not require me putting together a newsletter every week. So yes, some of my frustration about newsletters and how they are oftentimes imposed on us. There is something rather arbitrary about the schedule with which they come out. And so we can also go into that a little bit more. Yes, friends, if you have not heard Faith's first 2 visits to the podcast, I strongly advise you go back. I did put links in the show notes, so you can go back and do make sure, because you are going to want to make sure that you follow Faith on social media, because she is a rock star, and we'll talk about that more as well. So let's give everybody the full picture, because I know where you live and work, but would you let listeners know where in the country you work? Tell us about your current library, because I know you've hopped around a little bit, but isn't it, forgive me, but aren't you a better librarian because of the perspective that you've had? You didn't get to stay very long, but I think you're settled in right now. You're happy where you are. And okay, but all of those like brief stints gave you some perspective, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think we all risk, no matter what we do, you risk getting stuck in a rut and just kind of doing the same things. And I was in very different schools with very different demographics. And all of those things really, first of all, made me fully understand the kind of school I was looking for when I was looking for this last job, and the kind of program I really want to build. And also how kids really drive what I do in the library, because some things that worked in one school didn't work in the other. And really just getting that student input, and how much I've always worked in kind of similar places. So it was like this worked here and this worked here, and then it didn't. And so I really had to figure out the students in this whole different world. And middle schoolers are all the same. The middle schoolers are middle schoolers. There is no middle school behavior is literally the same. It's just the kind of different kinds of the same behavior. But like their interests were so different at one school from another. And there was like different things that they, just like the things that were in style and the shows that they talked about and the things that interested them. It was so varied. And so student input, I've always valued student input, but I really understand now how important that is to making a space that is welcoming and open.
So forgive me, but since you brought it up, student input is, do you do this formally? Is this sort of anecdata that you just sort of acquire through conversation? How do you get a sense of the needs that your students have? Is this informal or formal?
Mostly it's informal. I do like to send out kind of surveys if I feel like there's something specific. Because when you know something needs to change, but you're not sure what, something's off. That's when I'll do something a little more formal. But for example, last year, I always have an open library in the morning. I've just always done that. And so I did that at this school, and they hadn't really had that in the way that it was happening. And so one day I had like 60 kids, and it was just me. And that had never happened before. Like at most of my schools, it had been like a few small groups or the same kids that would come in. And they were just, I was so glad they were there, but it was more than I could manage. So I started talking to them about like, why are you here instead of somewhere else? And started trying to focus what we were doing in the morning a little bit more, maybe tighten up the rules a little bit more. Because, you're seeing the phones and all that kind of stuff. And I want them to feel relaxed and comfy. I don't want them to come in and feel like, oh, I'm scared of everything in here. But you also don't want them to come in and be like making a TikTok in the corner. So that had never happened before, just this like massive onslaught of kids. And part of it is the way the kids view the library. I'm usually trying to convince kids the library isn't a horrible place. So they are trickling in. And this was the school that I was coming behind an already healthy program. So I had to kind of play around with that. But that was just conversations. I let them keep coming and be kind of crazy for a while. I walked around and asked questions, and then had to kind of clean that up. But most of the time it's just what I see. And I have teacher ears, right? So like I hear them talk about what they like, what they don't like. I hear them comment on things, and I, bank it.
Friends, can you just tell that it's been like a long time since I've talked to a school librarian? I think I'm just sort of starved for these kinds of conversations. And at the end of a long day, I'm sort of debriefing. I'm sort of coming down from a long day, and we're back in school, and you are too. And all of a sudden, these are the kinds of things that aren't going to come up at the dinner table, because we do not talk about work at the dinner table in our house. That's why I have the podcast. Faith, so let's go back, give us some specifics about, we know that you teach middle school. Tell us where in the country you work and, give us an idea of the kinds of things that fill your day and some of the, if you have clubs or programs that you're especially excited about.
So this is really interesting right now. I am currently working for a former principal that I love. I was looking to move back and I said, hey, isn't your librarian retiring soon? And she said, yes, in December. And she was like, but I want you, we'll make up a role for you. So I am currently working as like the English language arts curriculum facilitator and kind of helping in media. And then she'll retire in December and I will take over the library, and we are currently building a new building. And I get to be the person who picks all the stuff in the new library. And I'm so excited. But the library they have now, this is an old building, and it's one of those old buildings. I don't know if you ever had any design like this near you, but it's all outside. Like all the doors face outside.
Yeah, not Michigan. I'm in California, yes. Arizona, yes. Michigan, no.
So it's the design of the whole school is a little odd, but the library is literally right in the middle, and it's beautiful, and I love it. And so I'm excited about the new one, but the current one is also I love it so much. So it's been weird not being 100% in the library, but I will say one thing that I have loved that I didn't see coming. I thought I would just be sad and miss it, and I think I did for like a day or two. But on day 3, I got a text from a teacher asking for an idea for an activity. So she's like, I want something more fun. Can you come up with something? And I was like, okay, I'm really making these teacher connections in a way because I've been out and going into classrooms, and we have a new language arts curriculum. So I'm the one that makes sure they're all doing it. So I'm going to be so ready I'll know them. I'll know their curriculum. So I think this is just an absolute blessing in disguise. I was nervous about it, but I think it's really going to help me talk about all that data and getting input. I'm going to know 100% what has been working and what we need to start doing.
Well, and friends, if I don't say it every episode, I think I say it every other episode, but no experience is ever wasted. We don't experience something and then it just becomes sort of compartmentalized and sort of put in a place where we're never going to call upon those skills or that knowledge or those experiences. But when you experience something like this and be able to then take what you've learned and apply it to the job that's going to be yours in a few short months, that's so exciting, and I love this. And friends, if you haven't listened to the renovation episode, which is a crowdsourced, it's a really fun episode that we recorded because it's got a bunch of people just sharing their experiences with renovations. And they weren't all great experiences, but they learned from them. And then they took what they learned and they shared it with the audience. And so I was really proud of that undertaking. And so, but when there's a renovation and you get a seat at the table, that's like magic. That's like gold. And you know how lucky you are.
And this principal... Listen, this principal, I did a remodel in the previous library, and she was so good. They would go and say, hey, can you approve this? Hey, can you approve this? She said, whatever Faith wants. And so next Thursday, she was like, we have a meeting about furniture in the library. You need to be there. I was like, okay. I am so excited.
Well, honestly, it's such to be validated like that is, and you know how lucky you are. And that comes with years of appreciating that not everybody gets that, So tell me about, you've got some clubs you've got or some things that make your students come in for you. And you're obviously, when you are the librarian, but, and these are things obviously you're going to be putting back into rotation. But what are some of the things that you are certain you're going to be starting up again when you resume your library post?
So I'm going to start coaching an esports team, which I'm very excited about. There's a pilot program in our district in a high school, but not at the middle school level. So I'm really excited about that. Christy Sartain, who is our current president-elect of NCS LMA, is one of my friends, and she does esports. And I was like, I'm inspired. I'm going to do this. And I've already talked to some kids, and they are pumped. So we're going to do an esports team. We do Battle of the Books, which is kind of run under NCS LMA's umbrella. And I'm helping with that because they'll practice all year, but we compete in like February, I think. So I'll be the one taking them to competition and stuff. So I'll be involved with that. But I'm so excited about esports.
I am too. I wonder if you could pass along a message to Christy and just say, hey, Amy wants to do an esport episode with you. And she said I could come along too, because I'm also starting an esport club. I mean, don't you think we could sort of work in like somebody who's got a club and somebody who's starting a club and sort of talk about, that sounds like a really great episode.
And there's so many things you don't even think about. Like my district has a lot of like rules about kids access and what they can play and what they can. There's all kinds of things that I didn't think about until I started getting into it. Middle school's a little bit different. I think high school sometimes has a little bit more wiggle room. And I said to somebody at my school, I said, I can't wait to do this esports team. Kids can get full rides to college for esports. And they were like, what? I said, yeah, like it's a legit thing. UNCG, which is where I went for my MLIS and for my undergrad, they just built this massive esports arena. It is gorgeous. They're going to be looking for kids to come to college and use that arena.
Well, I'll tell you what, don't tell Christy, and we'll let it be a surprise. Just tell her, you know what? Hey, Christy, you got to listen to my episode, my conversation with Amy. We had a lot of fun. And by the way, this spring, after you get your club, so just, pencil me in.
Yeah.
This spring, you and Christy and I can record. And there we go. See? Excellent.
I'm going to say yes for her.
All right. Thank you, Christy, in advance. And we super appreciate you coming and helping us out. I know a lot of listeners are excited about this episode, so that's how we're going to make this happen. A little strong arming from the podcasting, arena here. You have been so incredibly active in supporting your state organization. Now, I'll call it the North Carolina School Library Media Association. How does one call it if one lives and works there?
Well, we say NC SLAMA.
Okay, NC SLAMA. Thank you very much. I was going to screw it up, and it's NC SLAMA. And so, would you let listeners know what keeps you so involved in your state organization?
It's the connections. I kind of stumbled into it, ironically, after a tweet. Seems to be how I do things.
Those tweets are getting you in trouble.
Or X's, whatever you call them now. I don't know.
Yes.
But, and I ended up kind of working in the advocacy section and then moved over to some places. And I talk all the time about how we're such a lonely profession. Nobody else really is in our building. Even if you have somebody helping you, it's rarely two full-time librarians. And so I've never had even someone to assist me. So it's very isolating. And being involved in the organization means I'm constantly connected to other librarians. I'm either talking to librarians on the board to build things for librarians. We just had our first school librarian virtual boot camp, which was kind of a brainchild of Jazel's mini-con. So in the morning, we had 30-minute mini sessions. And in the afternoon, we literally had just open dropout rooms with themes. So we go drop in, ask any questions that you have, just talk if you need to talk. We are really trying to encourage people that connection is important. So for me, it's the connections. It's knowing that we have to be the change. I really feel like if change is going to come for our profession, I think it's going to need to come from the state organizations, because every state is so different and what's happening in every state is so different that the AASL can't possibly keep up with what we need to do. So I think it's going to have to be us. And so that's part of why I continue to be involved. And I ran for president-elect and I got it. So in January, I'll be the president-elect, which I said I would never do because they have to plan conference. Listen, I said I would never do. I don't want to plan conference. But then Christy, in all of her wisdom, when she became president-elect, made a conference committee. So now it's not just that person. So I was like, maybe I'll give it a shot. So I'm really excited. But it's the connection, whether it be at conference with other librarians or interacting with them to meet librarians' needs. Like I said, we love to help people and be everything to everybody. And that's a way for me to do that for other librarians.
Well, and I think of school library conferences, whether it's at our state level or it's at the national level, it's almost like you're when you see that recharge of your battery, when you plug in your
Yes.
device and you can see that your device is recharging as you watch it recharge. And I'm like, that is for me going to a physical conference.
Yes.
We do our best with remote supports and all of that. But I'll tell you what, when I go to a school librarian conference, I can just feel, I don't know if it's happening along with the fact that my blood pressure is just falling away and I can just finally breathe. I'm surrounded by friends and it is an instant. I mean, the energy that you have in a space when you're surrounded by school librarians, it really is like nothing else. And, it's like you have an instant family right around you. And again, whether it's the national level or the state level, and I will say this at the international level as well, you have so many things already that you share with people who may be perfect strangers. You can just pick up and have those amazing, rich conversations that turn into relationships. So I'm really excited for NC Slamma.
I'm so excited you're
They're
coming.
in for a treat.
And you're coming?
And I guess, friends, I am going to be meeting Faith in person
Yay.
for the first time in October, right before AASL. And so I'm very excited. And I'm honest to goodness, friends, when you have those things on your radar and it just helps with the rest of your day. It just sort of gives you focus and it helps keep all of your energy pointing in a direction that's productive and you just feel good about everything. So I'm so excited. In the spring of 2021, you were already very excited about using TikTok to raise the profile of what librarians do all day. As someone who hasn't jumped on the TikTok bandwagon, please clue me in. What kinds of messages have you been sharing on TikTok these days?
Listen, I'm still out there trying to tell people to stop leveling their libraries and to let kids read what they want. And that always stirs people up. And I will say, talking about those connections, there's so many librarians on TikTok. I was ironically just having a conversation right before I got on to do this podcast about hills we would die on with another librarian in her comments. And it's one of those things, like, it's the way to recharge my battery a little bit in between the face-to-face, because I like seeing something about seeing the person in the TikTok video makes it feel a little more connected. I also just post a lot of random stuff. My school district that I'm in right now has really strict social media policies, so I can't film on campus or anything like that. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like for this year, what that's going to turn into. But I still, about every few months have to rant about letting kids read what they want and the joy of reading. And I talk a lot about banned books and walk people through some of the books that are being banned. I did one on drama specifically, and I was like, I need you guys to see what's so offensive in this Raina Telgemeier book because it's bananas. And just anything to make people think a little bit before they do things. And it's stuff that maybe, especially like the leveled library stuff, we've all done things in our first few years that we would never do again. And that's one of those things that I don't think I ever thought it was a great idea, but I would have done it. And I would never do it now.
And the ones I really appreciate are the anyone who wants to get the message out there that graphic novels are real books.
Yes. That was one of the hills we said we would die on.
Yes, because I got to tell you, it was so nice. One of the nicest things I realized when I started at my high school is during our memoir unit that my ELA team values and permits students to read graphic memoirs for their memoir unit. And so when I did get a grant, I got a lovely grant, and I had the best time really sort of finding some great graphic memoir titles to buy because this is supporting the curriculum. And you're like, well, that just makes me feel all the more better about the money I'm spending on these particular purchases. Let's turn towards the focus of today's conversation. All of us, on some level, have had some experience with newsletters. And I have such mixed feelings about them because I know why they're important. But at my core, I resent this. I resent the fact that, and maybe that's because, I'll be honest, and when I was a classroom teacher, friends, I wasn't asked to do newsletters. And by the way, didn't have to prove what I was doing with your kid because I was their social studies teacher. And nobody was saying, hey, every week we need you to write a newsletter going out to the staff or going out to the families to tell them what you're doing because, newsflash, I'm a classroom teacher. So I appreciate classroom teachers also do newsletters, but I feel like for us, it's kind of loaded. There's a great deal more weighing on this. So, I just feel like it's different than when classroom teachers write newsletters. I feel like the stakes are much higher when school librarians are creating and sending out newsletters.
I agree. I feel like when we send out a newsletter, it's to prove that we deserve to be there, that we are of value to the building, that, like I said, they'll see what I did in my newsletter, so they'll know why I couldn't help them fix their device. It does feel heavier. It doesn't feel lighthearted. I feel like it has to have a very distinct purpose, and it can't be too long and it can't be too short, and I need people to know what I'm doing. But I have found some rhythms that make it easier, but that took a while.
And we're going to make sure, we're going to talk about some of those best practices. But again, it is, I think there are a couple things that come from me that sort of make this sort of arduous, that make this burdensome. And number one is that I'm required to do this. I am mandated. I was told by the first person who hired me, you will have a weekly newsletter. And when I tell school librarians that I put out a weekly newsletter, the response is usually, really? Like, a weekly newsletter? You have to do this.
I do too.
Now,
but nobody told me I had to.
But my weekly newsletter is to my staff. It is.
Mine too.
Okay. Yeah. My weekly newsletter is to my staff. So we're definitely going to, hopefully Faith is going to share with us some of those things that have really helped you become far more efficient. Is it fair to say, to be more efficient in this process? Let's first of all, what do you feel are some of the mistakes that school librarians make in generating and sharing out our newsletters?
A lot of times, I know that when I first started doing it, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just felt like I needed people to know what was happening. And I wasn't thinking about my audience. I was thinking about me and my libraries. I wasn't getting a lot of positive feedback from that. And it took me some hit or miss kinds of things to figure out what. I've been best at teachers. I've done students some, I've done parents some, but I've been most consistent with teachers. Doing it and knowing what they would ask me about or what people would mention kind of got me thinking about what they seem to gravitate toward. And so know your audience and write for your audience. We're so passionate and we're so excited to share what we do because, again, we're alone in the library and nobody knows what we're doing in there. They're just making it up sometimes or assuming what's happening. So we wanted to share so much, but know your audience and know them well. And don't just know I'm sending it to teachers. But who are your teachers and what do they like and what are they interested in and what do they need? I have been that person sometimes that would send things because I saw something that a few teachers maybe were needing some help with. And so I might include that. So definitely know your audience. But that also goes towards knowing how often you can berate them with information. And if you don't have a say in it and you're forced to do it every week, that's totally different. And I have done weekly in my other schools, and that might not work where I'm at now. We'll find out. But knowing kind of how much other information they're getting, plugging in with your audience and knowing when you could send it, that it wouldn't come along with my principal sends out an email and when can I send it where it's going to not hit at a time when they have multiple newsletter type things coming in. All of that ties back to your audience, but they're all kind of separate things, right? Know what they want to see, what they might be interested, what they need to hear from, know when they would be most open to hearing it and trying to coordinate that as best you can, personalize it when you can. But all of those things, it's about your audience. What do they need? And what I really, in my head, I was I'm going to send a newsletter out and it's going to go to parents and staff That's not going to work. They're two very different audiences. There's a lot of information, like I would put kids' names and stuff in the like teacher one, and parents don't necessarily need to know all the nitty-gritty. They just want to see pictures of their kids and maybe some things that are happening. So it all boils down to audience. Don't let your passion overshadow what you're really trying to do with your newsletter. So know your audience and know your purpose. Why are you sending this newsletter? Is it just because you want them to know what you're doing? Are you trying to make connections with the community, with your teacher? Like why are you doing it? And it's okay if it's just so they know what you do, but you need to know your audience and your purpose really well.
Well, and I love all these important points that you've brought up. And I'll be honest, when I find something and I'm not going to use it right away, it is oftentimes ed tech related, but I realize I sort of want to be timely. You don't want to salt your audience with too much information. I have found a one-pager. It's going to be a one-pager. And to me, that works really well, a nice balance of images and links and to provide that balance. But for me, when I do find something, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm already done with this week's newsletter. Oh, well, that's okay, because I'm going to indicate on it when it's going to come out. Is this coming out is it seasonal? Is this a great thing to do before we shut down for the year? Is this something we need that's more relevant to the beginning of the school year? But for me, it's about having a place to put those things. And I either have a folder on my toolbar, and I use a little newspaper on there, a little newspaper icon. So I just kind of embed those. So those are the places where those might be blogs I visit because they've got great content. Or there are videos that I've seen or somebody that I follow and I think, oh, that's a great something I'm going to put in my newsletter. Or I'll put it in Google Keep under, newsletter. And that is so I don't feel like just because I found it today means it has to go in this week's newsletter. So I totally agree. And I appreciate that you want to be cognizant of what else is going on in the school year. I'm on a county level committee about AI, and we're putting together a sort of a ebook all on AI and best practices to utilize in the district. And at one point in June, we sort of said, hey, why don't we, put this out to all of our districts in, late August. We put the kibosh on that real quick. It was like, well, pause. We are all going to be in the throes of the beginning of school. This can wait. How about it waits till October? Let's just kick it down the road a little bit. And like you said, know your audience. Is it possible to send out too many newsletters?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think it all comes down to kind of one of the things that I do is I've discovered like a pattern that works. So just like there's certain sections of a newspaper, they can always rely on me as they go through. It's going to be specific things. So if they know what to look for. So it's quick and it's easy. They can find what they need and they can leave. I also archive them. So if they want to go back and find them, they can find all the links for the newsletters for that year. And I do that in a Wakelet, and I list all the stuff that's in them so they can say, oh, yeah, I wanted that particular thing. It's super easy to put it in a Wakelet. And then in the description, you just list kind of the main topics. So if they're looking for something specific, it's easy to find. So even if they do get overloaded, they can go back and look at it later.
I love that idea about Wakelet because right now I've got 2 years worth of newsletters. They're in a Google Drive. And there's a link in the newsletter to the Google Drive so that you can see each year worth of newsletters. But I like the Wakelet idea even better because then you don't have necessarily the permissions, the issue that you might have with something that's in Google, as opposed, that way people might actually be able to enjoy it, say, even outside of your district. Would that be possible?
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that you can put in the description kind of the main ideas means they'll just skip the ones that they don't feel like they need. If they're looking for that one tool, I'll name the tool in that description so it's easy for them to go back and find it. Let me just go ahead and go on record saying never send your newsletter out on Friday afternoon. No one is mentally interested in anything you have to say on Friday afternoon. Yeah, Tuesdays are not. Okay, but it's funny. I used to send mine just because I used to just send it along when my admin did hers on Sunday afternoons. And there was one Sunday this past year that I just didn't send it. I didn't get around to it. I was like, I'll just send it Monday morning, because one of the things I put on mine is the library schedule for the week. So they know when I have classes or when it might be closed if I'm not there, anything like that. So I try to send it out towards the beginning of the week. I got a text from a teacher, and she said, "Where's your newsletter? It makes me feel better. It takes away my Sunday scaries. Where's your newsletter?" And I have never felt so validated in my life. So I think there's something to that like Sunday afternoon sweet spot, because if people are not, they won't see it till Monday if they're not looking. But some people, that's a way they prepare themselves for the week. And I had never really thought about it, but she was like, that's what helps me with the Sunday Scaries is reading through your newsletter. And so I never missed it again.
Yes, timing is everything, but I would say the beginning of the week is better than the tail end of the week. I think that if you're going to put something out, let's be creative and put something out on Tuesdays. Tuesdays are fairly, they're not Wednesdays. Would you be able to share with us a couple, and obviously these are last year's newsletters or so a sample of something you've sent out that also shared out your schedule? Would you be allowed to do something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I might have to go in and blur some stuff. I might have to be creative, but
you can redact.
I'll redact it.
Redact a few names. But I think what I'm curious about is you conveying, because for me, when my teachers come down, a lot of this is sort of impromptu. Many of them will come down to the Learning Commons, but it isn't necessarily something that had been on the plan. It was sort of a backup, or it was like I had to get a sub or something happened. But I think it's fascinating because next week I'm booked because it's the first week back to school and all the teachers are like, hey, we've got to come and get our independent reading. Hey, we're going to do, freshman orientation. I am booked. So if I could put that out to the staff, that would be great.
And I did it in Canva. I have settled kind of I will talk about things I use later, but right. I use Smore mostly, but I make my weekly schedule in Canva, and I just designed it kind of to look like Post-it notes on corkboard. And I have the days of the week. I can send you that too. I'll put a template to it.
Please do. Friends, I love seeing what other librarians do. And because I'll be honest, for me, there's enough of my bandwidth that is going into doing my job that if I can look at something that somebody else has done that has been successful, I think a lot of people would really appreciate it. And friends, not that you'll find my newsletters at all inspiring, but I will put several of them into our show notes just so you can get a sense of what they look like. Not that they're anything to write home about, but, to get to see what other people do and then, take what you like and go with it.
That's what we do. I'm sure I got it from somewhere else. I feel like I've never had an original idea in my life, if I'm being honest. I just feel like it probably came from somewhere else. But I would just go in and plug in whatever I was doing. And I would kind of personalize it. So I went to my sister-in-law's wedding and I put a picture of her and her fiance and said, I'll be leaving early to go to this event. And here's their picture and they're so cute. And so I put a little bit of myself in there because some days I'm not there because I'm doing things. Some days I'm at meetings. And I need them to see when I have morning things, when I have classes, because that's when people see it and they go, well, I also teach 7th grade science. What were you doing with that class? I do that too. So it's a way for them to get ideas of who can come in. I think there's this mindset, especially in middle school, but probably in high school too, that the library is for English teachers. And it's not. Some of the coolest thing I have done have been with science and social studies teachers. I'm still working on how to get the math teachers in. If somebody can do a podcast episode on getting math teachers to buy into the beauty of the library, I have a few things, but they're very few and far between.
I am very excited because of, I do know how to get our phys ed teachers in, because every once in a while when we have state testing, the gyms are all used for state testing. And depending on the weather, they might not be able to go outside. So all of a sudden we've got gym teachers who are going to do, they're going to do a unit and they're going to be in the Learning Commons because they can't use their gyms. They might be able to use the weight room, but they've got classes all day long. And so all of a sudden, so that's really been a win. And, for me, a lot of times when it comes to the math teachers, sometimes if you can do like gallery walks, if you can do something, because we have some very large glass panels as encircling our rooms. We have like these goldfish bowl like classrooms, putting up something where you would have them working on something collaboratively. We've been able to work with the math teachers a little bit, but the science ones, that's obviously research but you just got to think about it. Every once in a while we get the choir in there to sing because we've got some fantastic acoustics in my space. So, I'm grateful. Let's talk a little bit about those platforms that you've used. I'll go first because I'm boring. What I've always used has been free. So when I was an elementary special, we did something that was kind of fun. So in this case, we had, we had music, art, gym, library, and we had Spanish. And so each month we would have a one-pager of those specials. And you would get, if you can imagine, about a fifth of the page. So if you could divide that 8.5 by 11 digital piece of paper by, you get a fifth of that. And it had a little logo for the library, a little logo for gym, for art, music, and Spanish. And next it would say Mrs. Herman, and I would talk about what we're doing in kinder, what we're doing in first grade. And we would talk just a couple little sentences. And oh, by the way, the book fair is going to be on this day, or something like that, or books are due on this day. But the nice thing was it was once a month, and it showed a certain cohesiveness with all our specials teams, that we would have this one sort of digital piece of paper. I was in charge because they, obviously...
You can't say no.
Right, yes, I can't say no. You know what happened? I picked it up after the last librarian. I was like, it had been the librarian's job. I sort of inherited it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense, though, like...
And everyone's like, oh, but I don't do that technology thing. I'm like, it's a doc. It's a
right.
Google Doc. But okay, sentences. We're going to ask for a couple sentences from you each month, but okay.
Can I send them with my carrier pigeon?
So yes, we would do the specials team, and the specials team would have, and that was sort of, I felt that was sort of good because, reminding the families that we have all these offerings for your students. And for me now, and friends, you'll take a look, and it's nothing special. It's just, for me, it's a Google slide that I have, and each week I update the different sections with different ideas and links and so forth, and then it all goes into a folder that the staff can access. And I will say one more thing. I do have a staff tab on my library webpage. And so when you do the drop down on the staff, you can see past newsletters. So that is there. But so what works for you when it comes to platforms? You started to talk about it a little bit, but I sense that you have explored other platforms.
Everything I will tell you about, I have tried and used. So I played around a while with using Wakelet as my newsletter. And honestly, it was simple, it was clean, it was quick. I like things to be really pretty, and I couldn't customize Wakelet as much as I wanted to, but it worked. It got the information out. I was able to put everything I needed. I started using Smore, using the free Smore account. And actually, the principal I'm under now, when I was under her at a previous school, I was using that for my newsletters, and she liked it so much she bought a school account. Because I was showing her how you could use it in the classroom. Like I had done a lesson with a social studies teacher that was like independent at your own pace, and I had put that in the Smore. And you don't have to use it for those kinds of things. I do spend my money on it, but not a lot. And for me, it's worth it because I like the data, because I like to see who has opened my newsletter. So when my admin hasn't read one all year long, which has happened to me. Not my current one, but that has happened before. I can be like, you didn't even click the email. But I like to see who's read it, and it'll tell me like how many clicks they've gotten. And then I kind of know who's interacting with it. So if it's a lot of science teachers, for example, I'm going to start pushing science heavy info when I drop it in there. I'll talk about my little like system in a minute, but I like Smore. I've used Wakelet. I used Canva for a while as my newsletter template, where I would just send them the like viewable on the web kind of link. And I like that, and I like Smore for its printability, because I would print them and put them on the staff, inside of the staff bathrooms each
You
week.
did the, what do they call that? The
toilet papers?
toilet papers. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
For real. Like, I thought about that, and it was like, wait, so forgive me. Did you put them like in the men's bathroom too?
So at that school where I did that, we didn't have men's and women's. It was just two unisex. Like, it was an old building with like there's no stalls, just the
There
room.
you go. Oh, yeah. Single
So
shooter.
I just put them on the inside. But I have done it in men's restrooms, but I've had a guy go in and do it for me.
Yeah.
Because it just...
We also have gender-neutral bathrooms. We also have staff restrooms. And then each of our departments, because the building is rather spread out, they also have a dedicated restroom for the social studies team or the ELA team. Or
Oh, gosh.
Well,
that's nice.
and it is a solution when you're working in a very large room. And I'll be honest, a lot of like elementary schools I've worked in, you've got staff bathrooms because those littles, they're so tall. Their toilets are so small.
Everything's so tiny. Everything's so tiny.
So we definitely needed to have adult spaces. I love the idea of putting these in places where people will see them. Something else I know I have heard is putting the newsletters over the copy machines.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
So when you...
While they're standing there.
Right. So when you're standing at the copy machine, and I appreciate, yes, we're supposed to be, let's try and reduce our carbon footprint. Let's try and go as paper-free as possible. If you put that newsletter printed out right over the wall that's over the copy machine, you're like, this is a good idea.
Yeah. Somebody may just stare
the
at
paper
it
cutter, one of the machete paper cutter.
So where they're just standing there. Yeah. The laminator.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
And I love using Smore because I can make it pretty. I make things in Canva and drop them into my Smore. And the video links are really pretty. I like things to look nice and neat. So if I embed a video, it's just right there. So once they're there, they can kind of...
If you can give us a version of that, just a view only, obviously, version, that would be fantastic. I know... Yeah,
I will give you an option to look at like an old Canva one of my Wakelet ones, and that one. I've never used Google Slides, but you can hit share and then publish to web and make a Google slide that looks like a website. So like if anybody is listening and they're just like, I don't know this technology stuff, I guarantee you can do Google Slides. You can link a sentence or a word or a picture to another slide, and it'll look like you know what you're doing.
This is true. This is very true. And, again, given that I get to do one of these every week, at some point you want to kind of mix it up a little. Before you go, because I think what is really important is to recognize the variety of things that we can share on a newsletter. Because, yes, we're talking about the why. Like, what's the purpose of what we're doing? And I think on the one hand, we want to, shamelessly self-promote. This is about self-preservation. This is, if there is one thing I remember vividly from library school, it is that you have to advocate for your job every single day and prove that you are valuable. And one of the ways to do that is to demonstrate the things that are happening in your newsletter. Another thing that in my mind is a great use of our newsletter is to share out resources we think our audience would benefit from. And, for me, if it's super specific to topic, if this is like, it's a biology resource, well, this is not a newsletter item. This is going to be sent, I'm going to send this out directly to the teacher, because if I send something to them, I want them to be able to see, oh, Amy had me in mind when I did this. What would you say, what motivates you when you're, putting together content? I guess that's a really good idea. What would you be sharing out with your audience? These are teachers.
So what I have landed on with my teacher one, and I want to do a parent one so bad, so I will keep you updated if I ever get that one to where I'm happy with it. But what I do with teachers is the first thing that's in the newsletter is last week in the library. And I will do pictures or a little rundown, different things. So it'll be last week in the library, then this week in the library with the schedule for this week. The next thing that I do is typically some kind of like a thing that I think would apply to most teachers. Exit tickets, warm-ups, classroom management, some kind of generic thing that applies to everybody, but nothing techie, because after that is my tech tool of the week. And I will say, it was from your podcast that you mentioned the shoots. Is it shoots and gifts?
Yeah, shoots and gifts. Yes.
Yeah, shoots and gifts. So they are my go-to when I haven't found a tech tool kind of naturally. I'll go and see what I've missed from them. But so that's what I do is last week in the library, this week in the library, generic classroom stuff, tech tool of the week.
Well, and friends, can I just hop onto that idea also? When it comes to ed tech, there are quite a few really fantastic ed tech podcasts, and in their show notes, that is where if you are just, I just feel like for me, I am not clever, but I mean, we're resourceful, right?
Yes, I told you, I've never had an original thought.
This is why we're doing so well. I mean, it's like we're separated at birth. But at the end of the day, when it comes to coming up with clever ed tech tools, what I do is I take what I know about my building, I take what I know about my staff, what I know about the people I'm supporting, and with them in mind, I'm now shopping. It's like when we go to the store and we're doing our shopping and we have to buy for people in our family. And we're like, okay, well, I know this is what they like. This is what they need. I'll go and shop with that in mind. And we do that whether we are getting resources, whether we're purchasing things, whether we're planning programs. The more we learn about our staff, the more we're able to sort of customize what it is we get that we know will support them. We're always working with that. Honestly, friends, I think that is what truly sets us apart from a classroom educator. When I was a classroom educator, I thought about me, my students. Did I worry about what other people were doing in their classrooms? Not especially, because I was worried about supporting the learning that was happening in my space. If I happened to find something, would it ever have occurred to me as a high school social studies teacher, if I came across something and said, hey, this would really help the music teacher, this would really help the math teacher, I wouldn't have said, oh, I should just go get that information. That I should relay those resources to them.
Just send it to them.
That is what makes us different from this is why we are magic.
And listen, all it takes when you're talking about your newsletters, all it takes is to get it really right one time, and they start looking. So last year, and never ever assume that they know a tool just because it's been around for a while. So last year, my very first newsletter as my tech tool was Classroom Screen. Now, if you don't know what Classroom Screen is, it's just a simple blank screen that you can put all these things up to help with your classroom management, directions, all this stuff. It's customizable. It's free. It's awesome.
It's a landing page.
Yes, it's like a little.
It's a landing. Yes. It's a digital landing page for you to start your class.
And there's so many things that it does that you can add on there. There's clocks. There's timers. It's all kinds of stuff. So
widgets.
Yes.
Widgets.
So I was like, well, this is like a super generic tool. Let me share this out. So that was my first newsletter. I got stopped, I kid you not, 10 times in one day by teachers who said, thank you so much for sending that out. I'd never heard of that before. And I would go in classrooms all year long and see them using Classroom Screen. So like, I was like, this has been around for a while. Like, they know this. But I was like, let me put it in there. It's a great tool. And I kind of went over what it did. Maybe they don't know everything that it does. Let me talk a little bit about what it does. And I did like a sample. And this is another thing I like to do. Instead of just saying, here, click here and go see it, I made one like I was teaching a lesson, screenshotted it, and put it in my newsletter. So immediately they can see how it's relevant and how it's used. But like, I have never gotten such good feedback from people who did not know me. Like, it was just, so it can be something you already know, can be something you just heard about. And don't be afraid to like send something else. Like if I were in the library right now in that same school, if I hadn't moved, I would honestly, if there were any new teachers in the building, remind them about classroom screen again. Because how many times have we'd see a note that we made about something we were so excited to use and forgot about, or that we used it once or twice and then we forget that it's there, and then somebody reminds us and we're like, oh, I used to use that all the time. So it's okay to repeat stuff too, because they may have forgotten.
Well, and forgive me, but you can hit some serious home runs with your newsletter with one thing that, you could put 5 things on your newsletter. And if your readers find one valuable tool, one thing to glom onto. I know that's true when I go to sessions. I'll go to a presentation and, I'll feel pretty good about it. I know, yep, I've got this. And all of a sudden somebody throws a gem at me. And I was like, well, that just made this whole experience worthwhile. And we have our district day of learning tomorrow, and I'm teaching at it, and I'm really excited because we've not done this in this district. I've done it for other districts, but it's a district day of learning. And I know that when you offer information, whether you're teaching it, whether you're providing it in a newsletter, and this is part of adult learning, I'm learning more about adult learning, but when that connects with a need and your user is looking at this information and it's connecting with a need, all of a sudden there's like endorphins. Like you're like, oh, this is it. I found it.
It's so true. And like, I know for a fact that all the people who read that first newsletter and found it useful, I don't know if they found anything that useful for the rest of the year, but I know every Sunday night when it went out, they looked through because they trusted me to give them something useful. And that's all it took.
Like you're winning fans, winning friends and fans.
I was like, what?
With your newsletter, you're like, well, I found something really good last week. I mean, let's just see. And I'd like to think, forgive me, friends, but I'd like to think that the podcast episodes are a little like that too, because I have long since given up on the fact that not every episode is going to be for every listener. Like that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And I appreciate that there are listeners who tune in. And they've said as much to me. Amy, I wasn't expecting to get anything out of the conversation, but I listened anyway because I like to listen to the podcast. And then I found something out, and it's really great. You're like, that's just a happy accident, right?
Well, because I think librarians talking to a librarian, like even if it's something I don't think I'm interested in, there's going to be aspects of it that I resonate with. And like you said, there's those sessions you go to that one little thing, and you're just like, that has changed everything all of a sudden. And it wasn't maybe, a lot of times for me, it's not even like, wasn't the focus of the session. It was something else, but it just landed in my brain and it changed everything. So you can always get something out of librarian conversations.
I know nothing about graphic design, but I still remember to this day, the person who taught me what a hex code was. And I now am obsessed with matching those colors and using the extensions on my Chrome toolbar. And that's actually one of the things I'm teaching. We're talking about awesome. Maximizing the real estate on your toolbar in Google Chrome. And then those extensions that really make the difference between, working smarter, not harder.
Amen.
And
yes.
that's one of my sessions tomorrow. And for me, a lot of it it's not the whole thing. It's the individual little things that could really change somebody's workflow.
Yeah.
And because it changed the workflow for me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Faith, I'm so grateful. The next time you and I talk, it's going to be in person. I can't wait.
I know.
My Delta app is counting down the days till I fly to North Carolina. You have a lot going on between now and then. Do you want to share with listeners? You're putting together some newsletters. Do you want to share with us? I know you're in this slightly different role that you have right now, and you're getting very excited about moving into your space eventually. But give listeners an idea of what kinds of things you're looking forward to. We're still here. It's very early in the school year for you.
Yeah, we're in I think today was our first full week. We started last Wednesday. I love our new ELA curriculum. I literally never thought I would say I like a ELA curriculum, but I really love this one. It has some solid pieces to it, some great up-to-date texts. It has, we have workbooks, we have digital stuff. I have really enjoyed going into classrooms and just kind of hanging out. That's something I don't get to do in the library, or I guess maybe I just don't make my time to do it. But at the beginning of the year, just kind of popping in, like, you know how like classes have vibes, right? So you just kind of go in, filling out the teachers, seeing the kids kind of interact. I've been doing some like beginning of the year assessments with some kids, which has gotten me some one-on-one FaceTime. We were doing fluency, so I talked to all of these students. Those are things I normally wouldn't have gotten to do, so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about being able to see what they need so I can build collaboration, and it will be so pinpointed in a way that it hasn't been in the past, because I can already kind of tell different teachers are going to do different things. We do something that I've never heard of before, but they call it extended reach. And so teachers are hard to find. And so what they're doing is, let's say you, Amy, are teaching language arts, and then there's a TA that is partnered with you. So you may teach a class on Monday, and the TA will have another class of your students doing small group work, practice, reading. Then on Tuesday, they will take your kids you taught yesterday, and then you will have those kids that were with the TA. So you're basically teaching 2 classes in one block. It's very interesting. It works oddly well because it literally builds in practice time, individual station time. It's really, and some teachers, they all do it differently. So there's one teacher who teaches live in her classroom and live streams it to the TA's classroom, and then they practice. There's one that splits the block half and half and switches each day. But so you're seeing double the kids, but because of that weird rotation, it really is giving me a big opportunity to work with those TAs, to come up with some fun things to do for stations. I've already suggested to the current librarian who's there, hey, you may want to reach out to these extended reach TAs, because they would love to come into the library, because their purpose is a little bit different from the classroom teacher of that content. So, and they do it for math and for language arts. So I think that's going to be super interesting. I'm excited to see that work.
You're like an undercover librarian.
That's what I feel like.
like a stealth librarian.
I'm there for language arts, but I'm also planning everything in my head.
So is your predecessor going to leave you some budget? Because for me, like, I'm always looking for purchases. What are some titles that are on? I mean, are you just pushing out those requests to your predecessor before? There's sort of like,
so she's letting me have the money and buy the books this year.
Yes, she is.
So I have to take some time to go in there, and I'm currently, I know I hate technology. I don't hate technology. I hate being in charge of technology, and I'm not in charge of technology in this building. However, our tech person had an emergency appendectomy, and we have to roll out devices. So I volunteered. My principal, bless her, was not going to ask me. And I said, listen, I know how to do this. I know you're
a team player. Team player.
So I'm doing Chromebooks right now. But when that's done, I really want to look at the collection, see what's there, plug in what I had at some other schools that I know are popular. So she came to me and said, book order is due before Thanksgiving break. Do you want to just order all the books? And I was like, yes. So I do get to order that this year. So I'm very excited about that. I do know, too, when they build the new building and we move in, we will get to order a lot of new books, because they only want newer looking books in their new library. So,
I will say, friends, you probably should make time for that retirement party that you're going to be planning for your coworker, to send her off in December. Not that everybody isn't going to already be busy doing a whole lot of other things, but I think you kind of owe her a luncheon.
And we have known each other for a while. She is a friend of mine, because we work together in the same county. And when COVID hit, she did not like technology, and I was her go-to person to help her learn how to do everything. And so we're a good little partnership. She's helping me do devices. as well. I think it's a different kind of situation. I was so anxious about it, but it's really been wonderful. And I know she'll help me with anything that I need on the transition. So it's going to be awesome.
Yes. So, friends, I'm looking at my Delta app. We have 41 days left. 41 days, and then we get to meet in person and talk together. And I can't wait to meet NC Slamma. And, really, thank you so much. I hope you have a great start to your school year. I know I'm working on mine. And thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you so much for letting me chat about things I love.
And we also have to talk about your social media because, friends, I'm going to tell you right now, Faith and I, well, clearly, I've been following you for over 2 years. Yeah. And so it's been more than 2 years. And, can you share with us, tell us, and we'll make sure to put your social media in the show notes.
So I'm on all the things, but I don't use all the things in the same way. I am the same handle in all of them, which is Teach in a TARDIS. I love Doctor Who. I've had that handle since before I was a librarian, so I've just hung on to it. You can find me everywhere. I'm on Threads, but I haven't really used it much. I'm on everywhere. I feel like I'm the most fun on TikTok, and I'm the most professional on Twitter, X, the website formerly known as Twitter, whatever it's called. And then I Instagram sometimes, but I'm best at my Twitter and my TikTok.
Faith, I'm so grateful that you were able to share with us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll see you in 41 days.
41 days.
Friends, I get my best ideas from school librarians who chime into the podcast and school librarians who come onto the show. And I think today's episode was a very good example of how that happens in real time. Faith Huff is an absolute inspiration, and I am so grateful that she was able to channel some of that amazing energy of hers into a wonderful episode that everyone is going to get to enjoy today. If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving some fan mail for Faith and consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. One last friendly reminder, friends, use the code UNITED to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more, and librarians who book their very first Literati Book Fair for this upcoming school year and mention the code UNITED when booking may qualify and receive a $500 gift card from Titlewave. Visit the link in today's show notes. The topic of our next episode will be Role as District Librarian and my conversation with Patricia Alvarado. I hope you will tune in.